from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I'm Reverend Charles Harrison. And on this episode, we will do part 3 of our discussion on the status of Black America. And today, we're going to focus primarily on what are the solutions to the critical issues that Black Americans face today in this country. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Reverend Charles Harrison. And today we're going to finish a conversation that we've been having the last 2 times we have done this podcast, and it's really a focus on the status of Black America and where are we today compared to where we were during the Civil Rights era in the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, and what have been the advancements of Black America during, the last almost, 60 years. So we're talking about, the last 60 years. Where have we made advancements as Black Americans, and where have we possibly gone backwards as we look at the totality of where Black Americans are today, in 2024. And the special guest that I have with me today is Annette Johnson, who is the Pike Township Trustee. And she's been with us through all of these sessions. And also John Hall, who is the former Deputy Mayor here in Indianapolis under Mayor Stephen Goldsmith. And we've been having a real good conversation. So hello to both you, Annette and John.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Listen, let's get into this conversation because this has been a conversation that certainly I've been having off air. I'm not for sure that we're having the kind of dialogue and conversation in the Black community that I feel like we ought to be having about 4 critical issues, I think, that we have been talking about over the last couple of weeks. But today I really want to focus on solutions. The solution of how do we rebuild Black families? How do we rebuild Black families? And part of the focus was that we were talking about is the number of Black children who are born in this country into single-parent households. That's about 74%. They all don't stay in single-parent households because many fathers and mothers end up marrying, so that number is not as high. How do we improve the education opportunities for African Americans in this country? Have we gone forward or backwards? How do we deal with the problem of urban violence? Is it worse today than when it was in 1960? And number 4, how do we reduce the number of neighborhoods that are filled with poverty and blighted? So let's focus on number 1 first. Rebuilding Black families. Can we do it? And have since 1960, have we gone backwards or forwards when it comes to the Black family? Was the Black family stronger in 1960 than what it is today in 2024? Is it about the same? Or have we gone backwards? And then what is the solution? If we have gone backwards, which I would say we have, what is the solution to rebuilding Black families?
Well, such a great question and a lot to cover too. But I would have to agree with you, Dr. Harrison, that, and again, it's my opinion.
Right.
I feel like we've gone backwards.
Okay.
We've had a couple of generations where we've just seen difficulty in raising our kids.
Okay.
And a lot of that has to do with the one single family household because, like you said, in 60s, 70s, and 80s, you saw the the two families, the mom and the dad. And the dad was very instrumental in that particular household. He was a very strong figure. He was the breadwinner, and
Right.
you look at it even on TV, just the various different shows that are portrayed. You just don't see that. And I was looking at last night an episode of Good Times. You had James Evans, and he was so strong, and he had a supportive wife that she was part of the raising of the family just as much as the dad was.
Right.
But that dad was very crucial, with being there and being that figure in that household. And I think we've kind of lost a little of that in our society now.
John, is it fixable?
It's fixable. The question is the will there?
Okay.
I agree with Annette. We had two-parent families in the 50s and up until the 60s, and they were always willing to sacrifice to make sure their kids got educated and did better than they did. That was the formula, I think, that has demonstrated the progress today.
Right.
On the black middle class, the black upper class, that was the formula. Today, I believe that in researching a little for Dr. Harrison's program,
right.
the Heritage Foundation has a black researcher.
Okay.
And I like what he was saying.
Okay.
He said we need a Black Wives Matter initiative. And it blew my mind. We talk Black Lives Matter.
Right.
He says Black Wives Matter because if you look at the stats,
right,
that black middle class, that black upper class, they are typically two-parent families, skilled up,
right,
earning incomes that set them apart. Those at the bottom end are typically, they're being left behind now because there's only a one parent in the household trying to generate enough income for them and the child. And so there's not enough resources to prepare that child to move forward in the future.
But does the problem start at home? And I want to paraphrase this in the sense, are we preparing our sons and daughters as parents to use the formula of the two-parent household, father, mother, and as dangerous today because, we have the LGBTQ movement today, who say, a father and father can raise a child, mother and mother can raise a child and be successful two-parent households. But is it starting at home that we are failing to prepare our sons and daughters to use the formula that many of us use growing up in the 60s and 70s and 80s that helped propel us into middle class and be successful? I wonder if it started at home, and I say only because I think I'm the product of what happened at home. But everybody cannot say that, okay? So I became what I saw, what I was taught. But that wasn't everybody's experience, and I don't know when it stopped being everybody's experience. When I grew up in the 1960s growing up, there were a lot of two-parent households. There was a lot of fathers in the household then. As time went on, we started seeing less and less of that. So where did it start? Was it a cultural thing? Was it something that was birthed out of the home? And can we recreate that? However, it was birthed.
Well, I think what has happened is, that component is still in the household as far as, the mom and the dad.
Right.
What has happened is society has really gotten a hold and gotten a grasp of our way of thinking, and it's very impressionable. We have social media. We have all these shows that pretty much say it's okay to be to do it yourself, or for the wife to be by herself, or the mother to be by herself. It's okay for the wife to leave the husband.
Okay.
Even though it may have been just something small in the relationship. But we're in a society now where we got to have everything right now, quickly. I want to make it happen now. And if it ain't working with you, I'll move on to the next. It's like, move on. And so I think what has happened is, we're in a society where everyone's brain cells and these kids are just so impressionable. They want to just do everything they see, emulate on TV.
Right.
And so we've lost that, I would say, the respect portion from our parents. Our kids are not respectful as we were. We would never think about doing anything. If your mom said do this, or your dad, you did it.
Right.
And you didn't question it. But
right.
we are given this mindset that you can question everything. You can, you don't have to do whatever you don't want to do. This is you, and it's your ideals that matter. And that's what I think has caused a lot of problems. It's all about us and being so selfish.
Is marriage today less desirable for people? Do they feel that marriage is even necessary anymore?
We don't promote it anymore. Our culture, our music, our movies, our books does not focus on two parents working together, moving up the ladder. The formula is simple. The formula is in China, Russia, Turkey, Africa. It's a simple game. But if you're not disciplined, if you're not trained, if you're not taught, that one, you got to get skilled up. Two, you ought to hold off having children until you find a partner. Three, both of you together can invest in a home and increase your wealth. That's all. That's the game.
Right.
That's the formula. But our music doesn't say that.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Our rap doesn't say that.
No.
I'm wondering if our churches, other than Pastor Harrison, says that.
And
the NAACP, I'm not sure is saying that.
Right.
So a 17-year-old girl with a child and no partner.
It's acceptable now.
It's acceptable. But the fact is, does she know how to get this baby up, skilled, trained, and ready to go? I would say her network, her family ties are not able to do it
They're
for her.
not able to do it. I agree 100%.
So then, does it require difficult conversations within the Black community? If people are not raised knowing the formula, then how do we promote the formula to the masses of people, and also the importance of marriage?
We have to promote that through the educational system in schools.
Okay.
When we were growing up, we had different types of classes where we would be in there for that whole semester. And think about it, if it's a repetitive type of class, that's going to be ingrained in you. We were taught, how to sew, how to cook, how to care for a kid or baby, or they gave you those little babies you would take home for a month to, you don't want to have a baby. And so we don't have any of those types of programs anymore. And I think a lot of it starts in the school with the classes that are taught. We don't teach any type of classes to get you ready for being out, how to deal with situations. For example, and I facilitate, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And so one session is about assertive behavior, aggressive, and non-assertive. And so my goal is I say, if you're going to be a successful individual, you have to be assertive. Assertive means you get your point across, but you don't put anyone down. You're not negative. You're not nasty. You're not rude. And so we have to have those kind of programs out in our communities. But again, it's really complex to do that.
Would it be challenging in education today to do that when I'm not for sure culturally that's as acceptable today as it once was? With a culture that doesn't not necessarily agree that that is necessary for success today?
Here's what an economist talked about.
Okay.
I think Romer is his last name. That we are leaving behind individuals at that who only have a high school diploma. They are getting left behind.
Okay.
No matter what background, ethnicity, or color they are, they're getting left behind. How do we get young people to understand you need more than a high school diploma to make middle class income? So the upper Black middle class is doing it. Middle class is doing it. I even believe that the working poor understands the formula. The key to this is, what is keeping that working poor from getting a good step up? And I think it's his area, his blighted area, the crime and violence in his neighborhood, the influence of the underground economy and those people working that on his family. I think once we figure out how to address crime and violence and how we make sure that those criminals in our neighborhoods are put away, I think then you can get more moving up.
Well, I want to make a point. When I was at Indiana University, I think one of the things that I noticed, particularly with the white students, both male and female, and I made a comment to my mother. They were not only there trying to get their education, but they were also there looking for the right mate. Okay, you know, looking for the right mate. Women looking for the right husband who was gonna be a provider for them, and someone who had something going for himself that was going to make a good income, you know, and both of them together. I noticed that when I got there, you know, compared to while I was there, I noticed the difference in what I was looking for when I was there compared to what I was seeing from white students, both male and female.
Let me jump in real quick.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
That is the difference between Black women finding mates and white women finding mates. I know I'll get calls on this. Black women go for the look. Who's cute? Who's handsome? That is their first pick.
Okay.
European American women, they look for what kind of job he got. Is he going to be a good provider? Then they bring in the other stuff.
Right.
That is a key element.
But is it cultural that we have to address as to, because I think some of us men look for the same thing, you know, in the Black men, you know, what she looks like, you know, because, you know, and then that becomes the attraction rather than the other stuff, you know, and I noticed that with a lot of us in the Black community, women and men, it started to change later as we got older, you know. But then, you know, some women would tell me the choices to find a good mate was reduced because then a lot of the good ones may have been already taken. So you didn't have as many to pick from, you know, once the light bulb clicked on.
Right.
Yeah. So Annette's just looking at me.
I think even today, you know, we had that discussion about how come Black women, Black men and Black women, we looking for that cute, who can dance, who can do all the other things, you know, but it's the physical look that's the attraction. Instead of who can bring in X amount of income that will allow me to live at this level.
But how do you learn that though? Does that start at home? Does that start? Okay, go ahead.
It starts at home, but it also starts in the educational realm of it, because and I keep going back to these classes that I facilitate.
Okay.
This is the conversations that I have with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders.
Okay.
I'm always talking to them to, withhold from any type of sexual activities yet. I want you to get to college. And I told them, by the time you get to about, I say, okay, you can go on and have fun your freshman and sophomore year in college.
Right.
And explore and have fun and join organizations. I said, but by the time you get about a junior and senior, you better be looking to see who is that doctor and that lawyer to kind of match up your skill set so that you can have a wonderful life. And you will be surprised at how many of the students their eyes just light up and they think that's a great idea. But I think if we don't promote it and we don't talk to them about it, we have to learn how to have these open conversations with our children.
Yeah, but are we at a disadvantage though? And I don't know what the percentage is. I read somewhere where the percentage of Black teenage women having children has gone down, but it becomes a barrier for many. Some overcome it, some never overcome it, Go ahead.
I just think it would start in the home structure.
Okay.
But think about if you only have one parent there.
Right, right.
Then you're going to lose out 50% of probably what needs to be taught. And then it should be conversations that we have in our church community, our religious organizations and places like that.
I agree.
And we have pretty much minimized church.
Right.
Everybody wants to come in and do the one service. We've taken away all the structure, the structure pieces of church services is a teaching mechanism, I feel like.
Okay.
It's teaching you how to talk in front of an audience, because we used to have our children up front talking. They would help out with the deacons, the young deacons. Yes. We're grooming you to take the place of the older men. All those particular components are all done away with.
Right.
I don't even know how many churches are still doing Sunday school. I know our churches holding on to Sunday school.
Very few.
Holding on.
Right.
And I'm a Sunday school teacher.
Right.
And I have 2 to 3 students that come. Mm-hmm. And back in the day, I would have 12 to 15 to 16.
Yeah. But I think you make a point. They're not in the church like they once were, where we could have these conversations. And in my point, I think because of what I saw at home, by my junior year of college, I started looking for Mrs. Harrison.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
you see what I'm saying? I started looking for Mrs. Harrison then. And it wasn't just, dating and having fun, but I'm thinking now in terms of who has the same dreams that I have and wants the same thing out of life that I want. And if we get married and have a family, what kind of life are we going to live? So I'm looking at the female college students, who I think is going to be successful.
Well, just like John said, though, but the household is not made up of the husband
I know it
and
is
the wife.
not. I know.
So if you don't have a husband and a wife in the household, how would that particular child know that that's the pathway to follow?
Well, and I think
they're not going to know.
They're not, and I think that's where I think you're right. I think we have to use the churches. I think we have to use the schools, and I think we have to use social media and educating the public and having honest conversations in the Black community about what the problem is, but what the formula is. Because if we're not promoting marriage, however you want to be married, and the importance of it, it is the formula for success.
Yes.
You don't promote the formula to have a family anymore.
Right.
Who's promoting it?
No, well, it's not.
The churches don't even. Talking about a singles ministry where everybody's single forever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And keep going to the singles. I thought the singles ministry was so that you wouldn't be single anymore. You done dated 5 of the people in the singles ministry thing. So it's not being promoted.
Until you get that family structure back.
Everything else
is not is gonna fail.
Because these young girls, think about it, they're in a household where the mother is raising them.
Right.
Well, they're going on and said, my mom did it.
Right.
And I'm gonna be fine. And a lot of them are just even staying single. Think about it, till they're 35 or 40 years old.
Right.
And then by the time they do find a mate, they may not be able to have kids that late in life.
Right.
And so there goes that right there.
That's true. Well, I do think we all are in agreement that education is a key component of rebuilding the Black family. I just think it needs to be talked about more, in our culture today. And I think Black leadership needs to have a strategy to really address this issue on the local level, on the state level, and on the national level. And I don't think we're having enough conversations about teaching the formula of success. I know with my 2 daughters, me and my wife, and our 2 sons, that's a conversation that we're having in the household, even as they're grown, the conversation, I know my son and my daughter's doing well by themselves. They don't have any children yet, but me and Fawn are trying to say, hey, this is the formula to success, and Jalen, I emphasize to my daughter and my son, don't bring nothing home that you didn't take with you. I'm serious. I mean, you got to have those conversations. Amen. You got to have those conversations, with your children, and what the advantages and disadvantages are, with my daughter. I want you to get your high school diploma. I want you to go to college or trade school or whatever you're going to do. But, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Not that you can't make it, but you're going to be at a disadvantage if you're, already have 2 or 3 children. Yes. Those are hard conversations I think us parents have to have with our children if we want them to be successful.
Yeah, I think so too.
I agree.
But like you said, we got to have a starting point to get back on. It's like we were on a nice train ride and somehow it was diverted and we haven't been able to get back on the track.
We haven't.
So I think it's complicated and I don't know how we can get back.
I think church ought to become a matchmaker.
Okay.
Piece once a month, maybe, where you get single women that are skilled and Black men that are skilled to meet up. Maybe you meet at church.
Yeah.
Well, that's the way we used to meet them, at church. That's the way we used to meet them. At church. Exactly. and I
wouldn't miss a Sunday.
Yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah, you would. Yeah, that's the way it used to be done. Yeah, it did. So yeah, that is true. So we talk about rebuilding the family. John, you had a comment as we were talking before the podcast that you felt like Blacks have made moving forward in education. You felt like we have gone backwards when it came to the Black family,
yes.
But we are moving forward in the area of education. Why do you say that when some are still concerned about where we are educationally, even though more people are graduating, people just wonder whether or not they will pass through?
Well, I think that you can see from W.E.B. Du Bois talking about a 10% elite class,
right,
to now those numbers are huge.
Right.
Progress has been made.
Okay.
I think where we are the family structure, that disintegration piece has crippled those who are low income, unskilled, and the working poor. It has killed them. However, we've got to look at those African Americans who have been successful. That middle class that are married, raising kids, putting their kids through the formula. The upper class, President Obama. I mean, there's stories to tell, but that's been a good trajectory. But I think what has happened is that low income, working poor are getting discouraged.
I think so.
The hope is not there.
Okay.
And that's because if you only are working with a high school diploma today, you're only looking at $15, $20 an hour.
Exactly.
Which, if you find a mate with no babies and $20 an hour,
Well, that's $40 an hour
that
for
may
both
be
of you.
something
Yes,
that you can work with.
yes.
But the hope has been taken because they don't see how they can get beyond their neighborhood.
Right.
So do you tie that the problem with education is mostly among the working poor in the black community and low incomes area? What do you think on that? Is that where the problem is educationally?
You got 20% of students in Indiana that are not reading at level by the third grade.
Okay.
And I guarantee you,
That's coming.
the high percentage of that is children of color.
Yes.
And if you're not
Who tend to be poor, who tend to come from poor families,
low income.
Okay.
Now they argue sometimes
Okay.
that schools aren't teaching reading in the way that all kids can grasp and learn.
Okay.
And we know low income individuals at home may not be practicing. Mom may not read real well.
Right.
And so Junior, if mom is not reading well, if his father isn't coming over helping him read, then Junior's not going to be able to read. Right. That's a killer.
Yeah.
Because Junior will not be able to progress to a higher level economic area without being skilled up. That's our problem. The upper class, the middle class, they're moving. The working class is where I feel the concentration ought to be.
So hasn't
the working poor.
The working poor. So hasn't there been? I know we have tried to emphasize preschool or pre-K.
Yes.
Is that what they call it?
Pre-K.
Pre-K.
Is Head Start still out there?
No.
Where we're trying to, particularly in low-income areas in the urban core, more children in those kind of initiatives. I don't know how successful that has been.
The pre-K?
Yeah, the pre-K. I don't know how successful that's been, but I know even churches, even like Barnes are now talking about doing that, even though, we have one right next door to us in a daycare facility there that focuses on pre-K. I know we're having conversations about that. Just connecting with that element within our community has been difficult sometimes.
The question I have is, can urban schools produce that skilled student who when he gets that diploma, he or she can go forward to some area to get a higher skill?
Well, I think it's difficult if the kids start out behind. I think it's not to say they can't. I just think it's difficult when kids start out behind, and particularly those boys are acting out. Then in the classroom, at a early age, and by middle school, some in high school, then we see them on the streets. They've dropped out.
You remember Newt Gingrich?
Right. Yes.
He and I only agreed on one thing.
Okay.
One thing.
What's that?
He proposed boarding schools for low-income students. And I agreed with him on that.
Okay.
In that, low-income families could have a choice.
Yeah.
We could send our kids to the Barnes boarding school.
Right.
Who would keep them to maybe the 8th grade or the 10th grade.
And get them prepared.
Get them skilled. Feed them nutrition. Skill them up. Get them reading good. They could go home on the holidays. But a boarding school would house them and get them ready.
It was all about preparing them. And then once that's where they were
in
successful.
Israel, they did it through the kibbutzes.
Well, I wouldn't be totally against that. I also think schools. I think school choice is if I could advise any parent, I would tell them a school like Building Blocks is where you need to send your black children. It's a foundation, and they taught like old school teachers would teach, and my kids would come home with all kind of homework that they had to do, and me and my wife was preparing them, every night, Annette, for spelling bees and those kind of things, math. They had to do math, the spelling bees, writing assignments. They learned to do speeches and those kind of things that I thought that was the best school that my kids were in, here in Indianapolis. And I don't think all kids, but we had to pay for them to be there.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Cornell don't mess around now.
Yeah. They wasn't messing around. No, messing around. And my kids knew that you couldn't mess around there. Right. That there were consequences.
So wouldn't it be good if, say, some of this $100 million that the National Urban League is getting, if some of that could go to scholarships or vouchers to low-income students who could get into a school like Building Blocks like that and really get a good, solid foundation?
We just have to, again, it's all about the educational piece. How do we get schools like Building Blocks?
Yeah.
We only have one. How do we get one here, one there?
Right. How
do we do that?
Right. I'm not for sure with the formula that we have today. And I know everybody's protective of public schools, and public schools don't want to lose the money. But if we're talking about improving the education for low-income families,
yes,
my son did much better at the Simon Youth Academy downtown than he did at Shortridge, because what they offered fit him better. Okay.
But what type of educators did he have at the other school versus the one at IPS? Because it seems like
that was a part of IPS, but it was just smaller. That they, Shortridge said, hey, he can do this, and it was a different kind of setting that I felt like fit him better, and he did well.
IPS, I think that's what IPS can do. They can create their own charters,
right,
where it's for a different type of individual. I believe that can happen. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was
through the public school channel.
Yeah. I was.
You just got to be creative.
And see, it's my only concern is, again, the monies that come out of the school districts to fund the charter school that may be in their neighborhood.
I just think all kids are not suited for large schools. I think that's the problem. When you got schools that are 2,000, 3,000, 1,000, all kids don't fit into that well. And I think kids ought to have a choice, because I see at Shortridge, some of the good kids, unless you got strong parents like me and my wife, can get pulled in the wrong direction by the other kids, and I mean, it's just like my son one time, he was coming home wearing red all the time. I'm thinking that, boy, what are you doing wearing red all the time? Well, he was being recruited by a gang that was in the school, and if me and Fawn would have been different,
right,
it could have turned out differently for him, because he was more of following and wanting to fit in and the fear. I just think if we're and I know this is a hot topic across the country, but I think if we want to equip low income families, then we ought to give them choices.
Well, a lot of the school districts are really working on making sure the atmosphere is just not so top heavy, because if you think about it, Pike's schools has the freshman center. So that means all the freshmen are housed there. You got a year to get into the maturity level, to get ready to be sophomore, junior, senior. But other school districts are doing that. They're starting with the child development center, like Pike has that. So if you're 3 and 4 years old, then that's getting you ready for kindergarten, and plus getting you ready for the reading. You got to be able to read by third grade. And then again, on the other end, the freshman center, because these kids were in the 6th and 7th grade, and they're not mature enough to be on the campus with sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So a lot of schools are starting to do that. I think Wayne Township has that same, model. Warren Township. I know this school districts are starting to do that because, it took them 20 years to figure out that this ain't working. So we don't want our kids coming in automatically and they can't read. Now, the challenge is making sure your child can get into these schools because the space is very limited.
Gotcha.
What's missing in the schools today, and I know we have to stop this session and we got 2 more to go, is the religious component of it. My pushback against school systems today is they've taken the religion part of it out of it, and I think that is a key component to your development. As a student in school, and I think that's where a lot of us have problems with it. I remember the baccalaureate celebration that we had, when I was in high school. Well, I ended up doing the prayer at that, those kind of things. The religious part of it has been taken away, and that's why a lot of parents end up wanting to send their children to Catholic schools, because the religious piece of it. Yes.
Yeah, we used to have that in the public school system.
I know
we had weekday religious education.
Right.
And I remember, seriously, walking to Barnes, and I shared.
That's what a lot of people used to say. They used to come to Barnes.
It was in the basement.
In the basement, yes.
I lived in that community.
Right.
Yeah. Didn't even know Harrison, what's coming down the road 30 years later. I would be with the pastor, but my mom loved those classes, but all kids went to that. That was part of your curriculum. You had gym. Yeah. You had art. Okay. You had music, and you had weekday religious education courses. But see, all the fundings in those areas is gone. Because you're putting that funding piece into these charter schools. Somebody got to foot the bill somewhere. Right. So on one end, you're losing this to go over to here. And I just had this conversation last night because I spoke at a neighborhood community meeting because they're trying to bring one in Pike Township. Right. But look what we've lost. You cut gym is only 20 minutes, art 20 minutes, music 20 minutes. No weekday religious education anymore. That's gone all the way. And what has replaced it?
But state legislators,
they did it, yes.
But Indiana has all this money. I think more people would be open to pushing state legislators. I don't want to get on no tangent here, but I think the school boards are a problem too.
Trying.
And I know and the education, because I think we live in a more secular society that has de-emphasized religion and the sacred part of that, and I think that's where a lot of people are having issues. Our children, more than anybody, need Jesus.
I don't understand where this started and how people cannot see that is a big piece that we're missing.
It is.
It's a big piece, but now you've got Islam, you've got Hindu, you got all these people are going to want equal.
Yeah, and we
but why not offer that for people who want that, just like college did? When I was in Indiana University, I had a chance to, take classes that I wanted to take. And why not offer that? But to do away with all of them, I don't think has been helpful.
I don't think it's been helpful
at all. Yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be one silver, like you say, bullet for that, because how would you have this religious class, this? Back in the day, we're all tied to one God. Yeah. And that was the end of it. And you didn't question. You just, now, again, like I said in the beginning, this social media, this media, everything out in the open allows everyone to say me.
Right,
I won't.
Right. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation today, and thank you so much for listening to us today on Real Talk. And we're really trying to deal with the issues that the Black community faces as we deal with the status of Black America. And today we dealt with how we rebuild the Black families and improve education. We have two more to talk about. How do we reduce urban violence and also reduce poverty in blighted neighborhoods? I have a lot of opinions about both of those subjects. So we will continue this conversation. And thank you so much for listening today to Real Talk about the real issues that affect our communities here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow it and share it on Facebook and X and other sites. I want to thank John Hall and Annette Johnson for joining me today. And I pray that you have a blessed and an awesome day. This is Reverend Harrison. Peace.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.